Knicks family, what's poppin' is your boy. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the lateness, but I'm here now. And we're going to go ahead and break this thing down, ladies and gentlemen. The New York Knicks defeated the Washington Wizards 100-97. And ladies and gentlemen, it ended up being a game much closer than I think we all expected it to be after the Knicks had a 15-point lead with about 4 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and they gave it up. Typical New York Knicks team, ladies and gentlemen. At least for this season it is. The Knicks gave up a 15-point lead with 4 minutes remaining in the game. R.J. Barrett clinches the game with 2 clutch free throws. And while, ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks gave up a 15-point lead, it would behoove me not to say to you that this is exactly the type of game that the Knicks need. This right here is the reason, and I know there's a lot of people that say, there's no reason for the Knicks to be playing these basketball games. There's no reason for the Knicks to be trying to get wins, etc., etc., etc. But see, these type of games are development. RJ needed to hit those 2 clutch free throws. The Knicks needed to give up a 15-point lead, but actually win the basketball game. Right? This is exactly the reason why you continue to play these games and try to win these basketball games, because it helps your team grow. And I know there's a lot of people right now that probably disagree with me and tell me that I'm, spewing a bunch of junk. And that's okay. I love you anyway. But this is exactly what you need from this basketball team at this point in time. Right? This is how your team grows. This is how you learn, ladies and gentlemen. The Knicks were led in scoring by Julius Randle. Julius Randle had 18 points, 17 rebounds from Julius Randle. He didn't really shoot well from the field, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it on your screen. He shot 27.3% from the field, 1 for 7 from the three-point line. And he shot 62.5% from the free throw line. Not exactly great numbers from Julius Randle. R.J. Barrett, he had 18 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He shot 83.3% from the free throw line. But he didn't shoot well from the field either, 27% from the field. Same as Julius Randle, 6 for 22. And he shot 25% from the three-point line. Mitchell Robinson, 15 points, 12 rebounds. And, I had to watch the game from the point of view of the Washington Wizards. All right, because the game, I get it on League Pass, and, the game was blacked out for me. So I had to watch it and listen to the commentators for the Washington Wizards. And all night long, all they could talk about is how the Knicks are an aggressive offensive rebounding team with Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, Jericho Sims down there. And ladies and gentlemen, it's true. Those guys can rebound the basketball, shall I say, when they put their mind to it. And they're on their game. There are nights when, of course, they struggle in that area too. But tonight they didn't. 19 offensive rebounds for the New York Knicks tonight. 19. Mitchell Robinson had 10 of them. Mitchell Robinson with 10 offensive rebounds. That's monstrous. That's big time. Evan Fournier had 15 points, 4 assists. And I'm going to tell you what, in that first half of the game, ladies and gentlemen, Evan Fournier played some good defense. And, he's looking better in his rotations defensively. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, my gosh, he's turning into a defensive stalwart. That's not what I'm saying about Evan Fournier. All I'm saying is that he's looking better. And I'll also say this. I think that the Knicks are working on a scheme that sort of like this. When the opposing team is in single coverage, has one defender on them, and they kind of spin, maybe turn their back towards the defender that is the person that's defending them, they have somebody come from the weak side and just attack the basketball. You seen Julius Randle do it and knock down Kevin Durant the other day, right? Steal the basketball, go down and score. And I think we've seen Evan Fournier do it a couple of times tonight. It looks like that's something that the New York Knicks are working on adding into their defensive manuscript, should I say. I'll continue to also say that I think the Knicks need to work on some zone, but, this is not a time for that argument. Right? This is not a time for that. But I do think it's something that the Knicks need to add into their defensive manuscript as well. Playing some zone basketball. Because I think it can benefit the New York Knicks. I always call him Alex. Accidentally. Call him Alex. Don't mean to call him Alex. Alec Burks. He had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Shot 50% from the field. Shot 66.7% from the three-point line. And then Emmanuel Quickly, ladies and gentlemen. The Knicks are, for the most part, playing with a light bench. Not a lot of guys that's going to come in and create their own shot off the bench. The only one that's really going to do that is Emmanuel Quickly, because now Alec Burks is playing in the starting lineup. Obviously, Derrick Rose isn't there. Cam Reddish isn't there. So it's on Emmanuel Quickly. Emmanuel Quickly is, his basketball game is coming around, ladies and gentlemen. 15 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists for Emmanuel Quickly. And, his rebounding has been big over the last however many games. I'm not exactly sure. But his rebounding has been big. And he's doing more point guard things. I know there's some people that don't want to hear it. I get it. I understand. But the truth is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. He's doing more point guard things out there on the floor. And I'm looking forward to watching him grow in that area. And we got to remember that Emmanuel Quickly is only in his second year. He's 21 years old. He's got a long ways to go in the NBA and a lot to learn. But you do see him doing some things out there that will have you questioning and saying, hey, can he do it? I know I've been one in the past that said, I don't think this kid is a point guard. I think this kid is, going to be, a shooting guard in a point guard's body. But he's doing some things out there, and I'm never going to say he can't do it. I'll just leave it as that he's learning, that he's growing, that he's developing. And hope that one day he can do it. I tell you what, still in the offseason, the Knicks are going to get a point guard. But, that's just my little thing on the New York Knicks. Quentin Grimes, he made his way back. And listen, Tom Thibodeau does Tom Thibodeau stuff. Quentin Grimes played 17 minutes tonight. The only other person off the bench that played any minutes is Obi Toppin. Jericho Sims played 14 minutes. And then Obi Toppin played 9 minutes. No Deuce. No Deuce, ladies and gentlemen. And I know that upsets a lot of people. It upsets a lot of people that Deuce McBride did not play in this basketball game. I don't know what to tell you. It's Tom Thibodeau. This is what he does. This is how he plays the basketball game. This is how he coaches the basketball game. I'll say this. You can find minutes for Deuce McBride. You can. And I guess the only place that it leads me to ask the question, does Tom Thibodeau see a future for Deuce McBride in a significant role with the New York Knicks? That's my question. I want to know what you guys think about that. Do you think Tom Thibodeau looks at Deuce McBride and says, yeah, he's going to have a role? Because if he does, then why not put him out there? Even though Quentin Grimes is back, why not put the kid out there on the floor? Cap Giggles said, McBride will play next season because Burks will not be in New York. I mean, that remains to be seen. That would make sense that Burks is not in New York. But you know what? Tom Thibodeau, he's liked Alec Burks from the time that he's been with the Knicks. The Knicks signed Alec Burks the same year that Tom Thibodeau came to the organization. And Tom Thibodeau has championed Alec Burks ever since then. So the way I see it, I believe that Tom Thibodeau likes Alec Burks. Now, does that mean that he wouldn't give up Alec Burks for someone who can contribute more? Certainly not. He will. But he likes him. And I don't know. Listen, the Knicks are going to try to make the playoffs next season. Like it or not, they are. So then my question is, does Tom Thibodeau believe that Miles McBride helps him make the playoffs or helps the team make the playoffs? Now, if Alec Burks goes, in a package with several other players to bring back a point guard, a starting point guard for the Knicks, then obviously it's going to open up a spot on the bench. Not a point guard spot, though. Right? So if you're talking about Alec Burks being gone, then you're not talking about a point guard spot that opens up. You're talking about a wing, a shooting guard, or a small forward. So that tells me if Alec Burks is gone and there's no more, there's a spot open on the bench, it's going to either be for Quentin Grimes or Cam Reddish. Right? Not Deuce. Because you still got, now, obviously, it's going to depend on who else goes. Alec Burks, he's making $9-10 million. Kemba Walker's making $9-10 million. We're going to talk about Kemba Walker in a little bit. Nerlens Noel is making $9-10 million a year. You package some of those guys with some draft picks, and maybe you can bring back, maybe it's Jalen Brunson, maybe it's Malcolm Brogdon, someone like that, or something like that, right? But let's say it's Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, and Alec Burks. Okay, you're giving up a point guard who was normally in the starting lineup. That's Kemba Walker. Then you're giving up a shooting guard, and you're giving up a center. You bring back a point guard who's probably going to go into the starting lineup. On your bench, you got Emmanuel Quickly, you got Derrick Rose. The only slot that opens up is that shooting guard spot, and that's probably going to go to Quentin Grimes. Then you got Obi, and then you got Jericho Sims coming off the bench. So I'm not sure, ladies and gentlemen, that Tom Thibodeau sees a spot for Deuce. I would hope that it's different. And maybe he's just going to, play the background for a little while. And and then you got, this young guy who can play some defense, hopefully gets a chance to prove, at this point, that he can produce in the NBA. And then when the Knicks make another move for another player, somewhere along the line, it opens up a spot for Deuce to play. But the only way, ladies and gentlemen, that I see it is if either Emmanuel Quickley or Derrick Rose is gone. And even in that situation, if one of those two guys goes as well, Cam Reddish probably moves into that spot before Deuce. So I'm not sure. You know what I mean? I'm just not sure. And, we're going to have to watch and see what happens over the summer, during the offseason, during the draft, during the offseason, et cetera, et cetera. Before we go on to some other topics, let's take a look at the Washington Wizards box score. All right, who did what? Because late in that game, Kyle Kuzma started balling, knocking down threes off the glass in any other way that he could to get the Washington Wizards back in the game. Kyle Kuzma was 4 for 9 from the three-point line, 2 for 4 from the free throw line, and I'm getting all of my lines mixed up here, stuttering over myself. 6 for 17 from the field. He had 18 points and 9 assists. He did a lot of facilitating for the Washington Wizards tonight. Then, of course, Kristaps Porzingis comes back to Madison Square Garden for the first time as a Washington Wizard. He had 18 points and 11 rebounds. He was in a little bit of foul trouble. 5 personal fouls for Kristaps Porzingis. In the first half of the game, KP was giving Mitchell Robinson some trouble. And one thing that you got to see is that when Mitchell Robinson really has to go out on a perimeter against a guy that can dribble a little bit, go to the basket a little bit, has good footwork, you might give Mitchell Robinson a little bit of trouble. It's not often that he comes across a guy that has that kind of dexterity out there on the field and, from the perimeter. But I think Mitchell Robinson, when he guards players like Kristaps Porzingis, who can get out there on the wing and put the ball on the floor. And I'm not saying that Kristaps Porzingis is a, like a 3-man or nothing like that. But, for a 5-man, he can get out there. He can get out there and put the ball on the floor a little bit and give opposing big men some trouble. Mitchell Robinson is going to have to learn to get lower. And I know that's a tough task for a 7-footer. I know it is. But when you're guarding a guy that can put the ball on the floor, you've got to get a little bit lower so that you can get underneath them. That stops them from getting into their position to be able to get to the cup. And then Mitch has got to stay on his feet. Because a guy like KP, he's got good footwork. And because that he can shoot the basketball, you're a little bit anxious. Oh, let me watch him. Let me get my hand up here. Let me da-da-da-da-da. You know what I'm saying? And then, you end up giving up a bucket or two, maybe more. Overall, it wasn't bad, right? Mitchell Robinson did okay, and he matched the output of KP. But it's just something that I noticed in this game tonight. You got Corey Kispert. He had 14 points, 3-point sniper. He was 2 for 5 from the 3-point line, 4 for 7 from the field overall. The Wizards are the Wizards, so, I'm not going to go into too much depth about the Washington Wizards and what they did against the New York Knicks. Just a couple of guys that I wanted to point out there because Kyle Kuzma, had a big game in that fourth quarter to bring him back. And then, of course, you got KP, the former New York Knick. Overall, though, the New York Knicks, ladies and gentlemen, again, they win 100-97. You see the score down below. They out-rebounded the Wizards 60-38. 60-38. That's power. That's the type of thing that puts fear in opposing coaches' heart. Like, man, we got to make sure we're on the board because this team They're going to smack the boards. 60-38. I just wish the Knicks could do that every night. And again, the Knicks dominated the offensive glass. The Knicks, 18 assists. The Washington Wizards, 19 assists. Listen, the Knicks didn't particularly shoot great from the field, right? They're just lucky that they were playing against the Washington Wizards. The Knicks shot 34% from the field. So, yeah, there's only going to be 18 assists. 9 steals for the Knicks, 2 for the Washington Wizards, 6 blocks for the Wizards, 3 for the Knicks, 13 turnovers for the Wiz, only 12 for the New York Knicks. They took care of the basketball. Again, the Knicks shot 34.4% from the field. The Wizards shot 43% from the field. The Wizards ended up shooting 38% from the three-point line, while the Knicks shot 30.3% from the three-point line. The Knicks, 78% from the free throw line, and 2 clutch ones, big ones, from R.J. Barrett. Right, R.J. Barrett knocked down those 2 free throws. Great learning experience. Listen, in these games, if you pay attention to the games, for all the people that want to tank and lose and not try to win, if you really pay attention, you'll see how these guys are learning and developing. Right? R.J. Barrett was in a situation the other night where he had to miss a free throw. He made it. He ended up making it, but he had to miss a free throw. See, that's another learning experience. Not that, you're saying, you got to learn how to miss it, but just being in that situation. When you're in basketball situations, you got to figure out how to pull out a win, or you got to execute certain things. This is how you learn. This is why you continue to play these games to win. And I'm going to keep harping on it because I know there's a lot of tank commanders out there. So I'm going to keep harping on it because this is why you play to win, because this is how you learn. And this is how you become a better basketball team. This is how R.J. Barrett becomes an all-star. He plays in these situations and learns in these situations. And he takes it with him into next season. He might take it to him with him into the next game. Because when you knock down 2 clutch free throws like that, you build confidence as well. And now when you get into the next game, you feel like, I can do this. You get in that situation, you can knock it down. That's the purpose of these games. Call me crazy if you want to. I'll take it. I'll be crazy, but I'm right. Points in the paint, Knicks 36, the Washington Wizards 32. Second chance points, New York Knicks 20, the Washington Wizards 4. Of course, the Knicks were dominating the glass. You see it on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. The Knicks had 19 offensive rebounds. Fast break points, both teams were at 6 fast break points. Kyle Kuzma, again, he led the Wizards in scoring at 18. Julius Randle with the Knicks at 18. KP had 11 rebounds for the Washington Wizards. For the Knicks, Julius Randle had 17. Kyle Kuzma, 9 assists for the Washington Wizards. Emmanuel Quickly, 5 for the New York Knicks. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had 2 blocks for the Washington Wizards. And Quentin Grimes had 1 block for the New York Knicks. He wasn't the only one. R.J. Barrett also had a block. Jacob Sims also had a block. Good win for the New York Knicks. Good win. Although they gave up a 15-point lead, it was a good win, right? They started off kind of slow. The Wizards at one point had a 9-point lead. The Knicks had to come back. They built a 15-point lead. They gave it back, but they pulled it out. Ladies and gentlemen. And with this win, and I know people don't care, but with this win, the Knicks move into the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference, still, pretty much out of it because they're 5 games behind the Charlotte Hornets. They're 5 games behind the Atlanta Hawks. I think the Hawks lit it into Memphis tonight. All right? Both those teams are 35 and 35. The Knicks are 30 and 40. So at this point with the Knicks, I think their focus needs to be not on, do we get into the play-in, but just having the best record possible. It's most likely impossible right now that they're going to have a 500 record. And I think a 500 record gets you into the play-in. So right now it's just, let's get the best record possible. Let's play the best basketball possible and see if we can build something going into next season. You heard Evan Fournier the other night talk about how, him and Julius Randle are building more chemistry together. And offensively, and I know the Knicks only scored 100 points tonight, but, they're starting to build some more chemistry. It's coming. They don't shoot well. That's the big thing with this team. They don't shoot well. One night, Julius Randle will shoot well. The next night, he won't. He's going to score the basketball because he gets fouled and he goes to the free throw line. Right? So he's going to score. One night, RJ Barrett, he'll be hot. Next night, he won't. Same. Evan Fournier, he'll be hot, then he won't. The Knicks just don't shoot well. They got to find a way to build some consistency with shooting the basketball. When they figure that out, they'll be better offensively, but then, of course, they got to figure out how to lock teams down defensively. I think right now the Knicks are kind of in the middle of the pack defensively, about 16th or 17th in the league. Offensively, they're down towards the bottom. And I know somebody pointed out the other day, when me and Steph were doing the show, and they said, Sam, you said the offense ain't that bad. They're the worst in the league in just about everything. And, he wasn't lying. He wasn't lying. But from the eye test, I look at them and say, they can do some things. They're just not efficient. At times they have good spacing. At times they have terrible spacing. You've seen some good plays tonight where they looked good and they did some things right. And then you see RJ Barrett drive to the basket and Mitchell Robinson follow him to the basket and smash into RJ Barrett when RJ Barrett's trying to spin back out. Luckily, they called a foul on the Washington Wizards. So that happens. At one point they look like, all right, this could work. Then at another point, it's like, what are you guys doing? You look crazy out there. Some of it is the team growing and developing together. And then some of it is you just got some guys out there that can't get right. With the way, with their basketball IQ, and they got to continue to learn and grow. But I do think, with the right, one more piece out there, and you know what I'm talking about with that point guard piece, one more piece out there that this team can play much better offensively, can close games. They closed tonight's game, which again is why I'm going to say it's big, ladies and gentlemen, that they closed this game. So the Knicks get the win. I want to run down a couple of scores. Well, actually, let me run down the Eastern Conference, the way it looks in the standings, and then I'll run down some scores, and then I want to talk about, some other things, Kemba Walker, Kenny Payne, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, the Miami Heat looks like they locked down the Southeast Conference, I guess, 47-24. They have not yet locked down that number one seed, but they're on track. They're on track, 47-24, number one in the Eastern Conference. The Milwaukee Bucks, 44-26, number two in the Eastern Conference. Philadelphia is right behind them, just a half a game behind them. They're 43-26. The Celtics, I feel crazy because I told my man from Boston when we did a show on his channel, I said, I think the Knicks and the Celtics are going to be playing each other in the play-in. And if that happens, we're going to have to meet in Boston for that game or New York, wherever it is. Well, that's not happening because the Boston Celtics, behind one of the top defenses in the NBA, are fourth in the Eastern Conference and only 4.5 games out from the first place seed. The Chicago Bulls, they're 41-28. They kind of dipped a little bit from where they were earlier in the season, but still, they're 41-28. Cleveland Cavaliers, surprising everyone, they're 40-30. The Toronto, they're in the 6th seed. So right now it's Miami, Philadelphia, Miami, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, and Cleveland. That's 1 through 6. Then Toronto, 39-31, they're 7th. The Brooklyn Nets, 37-34, they're 8th. The Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets are both 35-35, and they're 9th and 10th, respectively. In the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns, they're locked down. They got it locked down already. Right? They already locked down the playoff pit. The Memphis Grizzlies, they're 48-23. They're number 2 in the Eastern Conference. As a matter of fact, they got the second best record in the league. Even though I believe they got smacked tonight by the Atlanta Hawks. The Golden State Warriors, they're 47-23. Looks like Steph Curry's going to be out for a little while. Hopefully he makes it back by the playoffs. We'll see how that impacts them record-wise. Right now they have a 3.5-game lead over the Utah Jazz for that 3rd spot. The Jazz, they're in the 4th spot, 43-26. They have a half-game lead over the Dallas Mavericks, who are 43-27. And then Denver, they're 42-29 to round out the top 6. Then you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're 41-30 in the 7th seed. The Clippers are 36-36 in the 8th seed. And then the Lakers are 30-40 in the 9th seed. And the Pelicans are 29-41 in the 10th seed. My question here, and I thought that this was something that was already in place. But when you have the Los Angeles Clippers, who are a 500 basketball team, and then the Los Angeles Lakers, who are 30-40, why should the Clippers have to participate in a play-in game? Right? I mean, it doesn't. I think that they should, and I thought they had it already, that there was a rule in place that you've got to be at least 2 games below that 8th seed. You know what I'm saying? In order for there to be a playing game. Because the way that this would take place, Minnesota and LA Clippers would play against each other. The winner would be in the 7th spot. And then the loser would play against the winner of the Los Angeles Lakers and the New Orleans Pelicans. But I just don't think the Lakers or the Pelicans should deserve that chance to get into the 8th seed if they're so far behind the Los Angeles Clippers. It doesn't make sense to me. I can understand. You look at the Eastern Conference, it's a little bit different. Right? The Raptors are 39-31. The Nets are 37-34. Right behind the Nets are the Hawks and the Hornets. Okay, so I can get it. All right, you got that play-in tournament. But man, a team that, the Los Angeles Lakers could end up being, 32-50 or something. Or, 34-48. And they're in the play-in. That doesn't deserve to be in the play-in. So that might be something that the league needs to take a look at. You know what I mean? The league should take a look at that. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, good win. Like it or not, good win from the New York Knicks. In other news, Kenny Payne, right? He's leaving the New York Knicks. I'm not sure if he was actually there. I don't think he was on the bench tonight. I don't think he begins the new position until Monday. So it would have been nice for him to coach one last game. I was looking to try to see if he was on the bench. I don't think I saw him. If he was, somebody please correct me. Put it in the chat. But, Kenny Payne is on his way to Louisville. Congratulations to him. I think it's going to, hopefully, he's going to do well. Excuse me for a second. Hopefully he's going to do well. I think he will. I think they're getting a good coach. He's making some serious money as their head coach. But for the New York Knicks, they lose another strong coach in that locker room. I think Kenny Payne and Mike Woodson were really good for the New York Knicks. Now, Tom Thibodeau on that coaching staff, Tom Thibodeau in the front office, they need to figure out how they replace Kenny Payne and Mike Woodson. You know, you're not going to be able to replace everything, right? But you can look at some of the qualities that they brought to the team and say, how can is there someone out there that can duplicate or bring those same qualities but with their own characteristics, you know? Because if you try to just straight up replace that person, that's not going to happen. So you got to find somebody who, you know, brings their own unique characteristics but has some of the same qualities. They've got to do it. You know what I mean? Last year, they didn't replace Mike Woodson. I think they have to do it because those two men were important figures in that locker room, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Important to that locker room. So I want to see him go out and, you know, find someone who was a former head coach in the NBA, preferably a black head coach, you know, so that they can relate to some of these young men that's out there. Not that a white guy can't, but, you know, I think you guys get what I'm saying, you know, speaking on the social level. Right? Yeah, I mean, but, you know, if they end up getting someone like a Mike D'Antoni or something like that or somebody else, I'm cool with it. Just saying, I think this would be my preference for this particular basketball team. But they've got to go out and get somebody. I want Tom Thibodeau to be the person who chooses the coach. I don't want it to be Leon Rose or World Wide West or Scott Perry. It's got to be Tom Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau needs to have his people there. Not that he didn't trust Kenny Payne. I think they probably built a great relationship. Mike Woodson, I think they've known each other for years. Although they didn't coach together, I'm sure they've known each other for years. Right? So the trust factor, I believe, was there. It's not about the trust factor. And it's not about, you know, me saying, hey, you know, these guys might have been saying this to Leon Rose behind his back and stuff like that. None of that. It's just about Tom Thibodeau being able to have guys that can preach his message the way he wants it preached. Guys that can, coaches that can, that maybe even already knows what Tom Thibodeau teaches. So they can help push that message to the players. Right? Kind of in Tom Thibodeau's voice, but, you know, when Tom Thibodeau's not there. You know what I mean? Because it's important. The same messages need to go from the top to the bottom. Things start to get a little bit messy if you have someone in between that's spreading a different message or thinks that they have the better answer. And so they're, you know, saying something different to the players than what the head coach really wants them to say. So I think it's important that the head coaches are able to pick their staff. I would like to see Tom Thibodeau, if they're going to add one or two more not head coaches, but assistant coaches, Tom Thibodeau bring his guys in, who he wants in. I think that's important. All right. Greg said, the coaches are leaving because they don't want to deal with Thibs and the young guys. Johnny Bryant will be next. Greg, you're bugging. You're bugging, man. It's not about that at all. It's about the guy making $3 million. That's why he left. It's nothing to do with, you know, he doesn't like Tom Thibodeau and the way Tom Thibodeau coaches. It's about, I mean, everybody has aspirations. You didn't expect that they were just going to be there forever, right? Everybody has aspirations. As a matter of fact, as soon as they came into the Knicks organization, there were conversations about them moving and going on, going elsewhere. So it's, you know, it's not about them not liking Tom Thibodeau, Greg. Greg said, if I'm bugging, when is the last time you ever seen two coaches leave the team? It happens all the time. I mean, Mike Woodson was a head coach in the NBA. Think about this. Greg. Okay? Mike Woodson went back to Indiana He played for Indiana. Kenny Payne went back to Louisville. He played for Louisville. This was not some, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. I'm going to go on the first thing smoking. No, they went back to their alma maters. You know what I'm saying? They went back to their alma maters. It was nothing about that. It's about them going back to a place where they're passionate about, trying to help them win. Come on. Let me see. Messing around with you, Greg. I missed the next person I wanted to talk to. But anyway, he asked me, who would I pick? I don't know. I'm not sure. I see a lot of, Glenn Colston. He said, who would you pick? I don't know. I see a lot of people say Mark Jackson. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see Mark Jackson and Tom Thibodeau being a good fit together. I think Mark Jackson does, the things that I said about, being a former head coach, being a black man, being able to relate to those guys out there. I think he fits. Right? He checks those boxes for me, personally. But I don't think the personalities match up well. I don't. You know what I mean? I it's hard for me to see it. It's hard for me to see Mark Jackson coming back into the NBA being an assistant. I don't think he can do it. I think if he comes back into the NBA, he's going to be the head coach. You know what I mean? He has a very strong personality, and I believe that Tom Thibodeau has a very strong personality. And I think that they would clash. I think it would be a dumpster fire for real. For real. I think that would be a dumpster fire. I like Mark Jackson. I would love to see Mark Jackson get another coaching gig in the NBA. Vinny Del Negro. Kept Giggles saying Vinny Del Negro. Vinny Del Negro is a very good coach, I think. A very good assistant coach. He has head coaching experience. He's played on some really, really good basketball teams. He's a thought. We have a lot of young coaches on the team right now. So I don't think we need another young coach. I think we need that experience. I think we need that experience out there. I'd really have to, think about it. I haven't thought about it a lot. I mean, I've thought about, who or what the qualities that I want in a coach, but I haven't thought about who's actually out there. And it doesn't always have to be who's out there. You can, sometimes you can poach people from other teams and pick them off their bench if you can offer them a little bit more money. So I'd have to, really take the time and look and see who's out there and figure that out on who I think would be good candidates. I'm pretty sure if they plan on replacing Kenny Payne and Mike Woodson and all of that they have some ideas of coaches that are out there. Jason said Mark Jackson is a defensive-minded coach. I think he is a defensive-minded coach. But, here's the thing. I think Tom Thibodeau is also a defensive-minded coach. And I think that Mark Jackson maybe has some of the same limitations as Tom Thibodeau. When you look at the Golden State Warriors, before Steve Kerr got there, they were a feisty group. Offensively, I don't know if he got the most out of those guys. Now, he's only there for a couple of years, and it takes time for you to grow and to develop. And it makes sense, when people say, "Hey, Steve Kerr got there, but Mark Jackson put it together." And if Mark Jackson was there, they might have done the same thing, and that could very well be true. Right? That could very well be true. But I think maybe he has some of the same limitations as Tom Thibodeau. And I think when you're bringing in that assistant coach, you should bring somebody in who brings something to the table that Tom Thibodeau doesn't. Something to the table, something to the table that Tom Thibodeau doesn't. Someone who can make on-the-fly offensive adjustments. That's something that I think the Knicks miss, really do miss. On-the-fly offensive adjustments. Mike D'Antoni, every time I hear about him as a coach that can make adjustments, players are like, man, he just sits down and pop, 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 and you go out and execute it and it gets it done. You know what I'm saying? He just has that kind of a mind where he can adjust on the fly. He can see what's happening on the floor and make the right adjustment just like that. I think Tom Thibodeau needs someone who can do that. Right? And, you've seen it before. We've all seen it before where NBA, you're in the NBA timeout and the head coach is standing back here watching an assistant draw up the next play. Shoot. We've seen, what's a Ty Lue maybe? I don't know. We've seen coaches allow players to draw up the next play. But I think we need to have an assistant coach who is really, really good at making in-game adjustments. And then Tom Thibodeau, he's got to allow that coach to make those adjustments. That's a personality adjustment for Tom Thibodeau. Will he do that? I don't know. Chevion Productions said we could grab D'Antoni as an assistant. You know what? I'm going to tell you what. I think it was maybe early in the season. I brought that up. I asked that question. Maybe Tom Thibodeau should try to call Mike D'Antoni. When Mike D'Antoni left Brooklyn, and I forgot what he went and he did. He was consulting or something like that. I was like, should he call Mike D'Antoni? The question is, and me and Steph brought this up. We had a good conversation about it. You should go check it out. It was on the last shoot around that we did. The question is, would their styles clash? Right? Would their styles clash if you're talking about Mike D'Antoni and Tom Thibodeau? Because, of course, we know Mike D'Antoni is a very up-tempo type of coach, up-tempo style, shoot the ball in 15 seconds or less. His focus is going to be on that offensive side. It could be helter-skelter out there playing that style of basketball. I don't know if Tom Thibodeau has the chops to do it, to play that kind of helter-skelter basketball. I think he likes more control. That's why the game under Tom Thibodeau was slower. The pace is slower. He talks about and wants them to play a faster pace, but I feel like when it starts to get too fast and he sees more turnovers, he gets frantic and he's like, hey, let's get this under control. And then, Tom Thibodeau kind of likes that smash mouth type of basketball, I feel like. And I just don't know if the two mesh. But it also, maybe it does work. Right? Maybe you put them together because both guys have gotten to the Western Conference Finals, to the Eastern Conference Finals. They've never been able to get over the hump. You can argue that Mike D'Antoni, if, that 1 year, if Amari Stoudemire doesn't get suspended or whatever, maybe they beat San Antonio and go to the finals. And if Tom Thibodeau had a healthy Derrick Rose, maybe they go to the finals. It can be argued. But the facts are they've both gotten there but could never get over the hump. The argument about D'Antoni was that he could never focus in and really get a defense, have a strong enough defense that, once you got in the playoffs, once you got to that level of basketball, that 15 seconds or less didn't work. And then the argument for Tom Thibodeau or against Tom Thibodeau is that he runs his players into the ground and he doesn't have enough offensive resources. And I'm not talking about players. I'm talking about in his tool belt, in his mental Rolodex. So maybe the two could get together and say, hey, let's let's figure out how to make this thing work. You never know. You never know. You never know. I seen some other suggestions out there. Latrell Sprewell. Spree, you guys know him, calls in all the time. He said Rick Brunson and Kenny Smith. Right, of course, Rick Brunson, and there's some other people in the chat that mentioned Rick Brunson. Of course, Rick Brunson's name is going to be out there. He coached with Tom Thibodeau before, right? So, that makes sense. Checks a box. He can relate to some of the players on the team. He's a black coach. Checks a box. And his son is Jalen Brunson. Checks a big box. Right? So, I'm pretty sure he may be thought of. Kenny Smith is interesting. I don't know if Kenny Smith wants to, well, he does want to coach, right? He has interviewed for some coaching jobs. Kenny Smith is interesting. He could be, I think he definitely can relate to the players. He could be interesting. That's an interesting one. Julie Tran says, I like Kenny Atkinson. I like Kenny Atkinson too. I think he could come in. I think he could come in and really, he can do what Kenny Payne was doing. Right? That developmental guy. Kenny can do that. And it's a bonus because he's done it on an NBA level for a while. So he understands the players a little bit better than maybe Kenny Payne did. Not that he didn't understand the players, but he's coming from the college ranks to the NBA ranks. It's different. It's different. So he's a thought. Definitely. Sam Cassell, Sam Mitchell, by a Deep Public Enemy. Those are some good guys out there. So yeah, there's some guys out there. Definitely some guys out there. I'm looking forward to see what they decide to do and how they decide to go in this situation. Jason said, Channing Frye said Tom Thibodeau's offense is drive to the hole, drive to the hole, drive to the hole. Somebody stops you, spin, drive to the hole. Yeah. I think it's a little bit more than that. You know what I mean? If you really, really look at the game, you can see some things that they do. Like there's been a play that they've been doing that's looked pretty good, where the guard has the ball on the wing, right? And they send two big men flying down the lane, not at the same exact time, but with good timing, right? You'll see Mitchell Robinson go down, and then following him up would be Julius Randle going down, and boom, you find Julius Randle or you find whoever. Emmanuel quickly found Julius Randle on that play tonight. I may have to do a coach's corner so I can break that down and show you exactly what I'm talking about. And break down some of the things that the Knicks do so that you can see that it's not just drive to the hole. Because that's a lie. I'm sorry. It's not that. I mean, there are a lot of things and a lot of actions that the Knicks do, right? So they do have some things that, they have some nice sets out there that they run, right? Last year, it was just kind of hand the ball off. They're doing a lot more than that this year. So if someone just says that's all they do is drive, and spin, that's a lie. That's wrong. All right. That's just fodder, for the fans that don't like Tom Thibodeau. That's just fodder for them. That's all that is. I'll do a coach's corner and break it down. When I get back into the studio, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a coach's corner and break down some of the things that the Knicks do on the offensive side so that you can see it's more than just drive to the basket. Okay? But it can be better, and there can be more. There can be more actions. Now, I'm not going to lie about that. There can be more actions, right? David L. says, yes, it's basic. You're right. It is still kind of basic. Okay? CJ vs. the World said, when games get close, it goes stagnant. Yes, I agree. It is basic. It does go stagnant, but it's not just drive to the hole. there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, we'll take a look at it. But I do agree it needs to be fleshed out. And so I think you need to have a coach that can help flesh that offense out. Because I don't think you use all of the skill sets, right? I don't think I don't think they use all of the skill sets of the players that's on the team. You know what I mean? So you need a guy that can do that. You need a guy that can do it. Jason said, he also said the offense is straight garbage. Well, listen, I'm not even going to get into it. You know what I mean? I ain't even going to get into it. I'll do a coach's corner and show you some of the things that they do. And whatever you think about the offense is what you think about the offense, or this person or that person thinks about the offense. I ain't even going to get into it for somebody to be sending me tweets. I don't get into Twitter beefs. So, I ain't even going to comment on it. Anyway, I was reading an article today, or was it an article? Yeah, I was reading an article today about Kemba Walker. And, Tom Thibodeau in one of his press conferences said, he was asked about Kemba and whether he's been at the Westchester training facility. And he said, no, he hasn't. He's working out in, Tom Thibodeau didn't say this, but the article said that he's working out in Charlotte, sometimes working out in New York, going back and forth. His mom is still in Charlotte. I think it makes it clear that somehow, some way, Kemba Walker's not going to be with the Knicks next season. Because if you got a future with the team, and we said, hey, we're going to sit you out, or you're going to sit out so you can rehab. Normally, you work out at the facility with the trainers so that they can keep an eye on everything that's happening. You know what I'm saying? And then, you figure out, okay, how does this player get better? What do we need to do? Et cetera, et cetera. You get it. You know what I'm talking about. Player goes away. He's in Charlotte. He's wherever, training, working with his own trainers, maybe not even giving reports back to the Knicks. That tells you everything that you need to know. Right? That tells you everything that you need to know. And it didn't even sound like Tom Thibodeau was worried about it. All he said is, hey, this is our front office, his agent. They had a discussion. This is what's worked out. This is what was best for the team. Right? So while everyone is remaining professional, I do believe, behind closed doors, it was like, hey, man, this ain't working. We don't think you're going to be a fit for next year. So you go train, get yourself healthy, get your knee ready. We're going to work the phones and try to make something happen. So I wouldn't expect Kemba Walker to be back next season at all. I think we all knew that already. This really just kind of cements it for me, but I wouldn't expect him to be back next season. I don't know exactly what the Knicks can get for Kemba Walker at this point. I think he could probably be a good player off the bench for somebody, to give him maybe 10 to 15 minutes a night. He could still give you, Kemba Walker can still have nights where he gets hot. We've seen it this season. Right, where he gets hot, give you 15, 20 points. Shoot, he gave the Knicks 40 points tonight, didn't he? Not tonight, but this season. Dropped 40 at 44 or something like that. So he can still get hot and light it up. He can shoot it from three. He's a good three-point shooter. Right, so I think that he can be a scorer off the bench for some team that can come in, and if he's hot that night, you let him rock. And if he's not, well, you get what you get. I think he can do that for somebody. Is there a team willing to pay $9 million for him for 1 year? Because that's what it would be. He's going to be an expiring contract next season. So I would expect if the Knicks can't move him in the draft, if they can't move him in the summer, then he'll probably sit out until the trade deadline. And then if the Knicks can't include him in a trade at the trade deadline, then you would probably see him get waived. So I wouldn't expect Kemba Walker to be back. Now, he makes $9 million. Nerlens Noel, look, I mean, if you could find a way, both of those guys are going to be expiring contracts next season. If you could find a way to package Nerlens Noel and Kemba Walker and maybe even Alec Burks, I mentioned those three guys earlier, with some draft picks, I mean, that's $30 million right there. For a player that is, I don't know who, so, don't ask me about names, but for maybe a player that's disgruntled or a team that's like, we don't think this is really working out here. The player's not disgruntled, but we don't think this is working out. But their contract goes for another year or two. We'll get them off of our books. You know what I'm saying? So the Knicks will have that kind of flexibility come next season. Well, actually, starting in the draft. They'll have that kind of flexibility with those guys and those contracts. So we'll see if the Knicks are able to turn them into, condense or collapse together some of those contracts and turn it into one player. Hopefully that player is adds to the team, adds positively to the team. Don't ask me who. I don't know. Right? I think I have some ideas on who they might try to go after with it. And it may not just be one player. They may try to, mix in a couple players. And use those contracts to, bring in pieces that they feel that they need. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Good win for the New York Knicks tonight. I know the Tank Commanders out there, don't like it, but I like it. I like it for the Knicks' development. I think that they learned something tonight. RJ Barrett learned something tonight, and I want to see him, keep it going. Try to make the best out of the rest of this season. Right? Make the best out of the rest of the season. The next game, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is against the Utah Jazz at home. That's a team that I believe the New York Knicks can beat. You've seen them against them earlier this season. They had a 12-point lead twice, and then they gave up that 12-point lead. This was during the stretch where, the Knicks season really went awry. Right? But I believe that the Knicks can beat the Utah Jazz. I just feel like they match up well with the Jazz. I don't know why they do, but I think they just match up well. So they can be competitive, and I think they can beat them. Yes, they play the Jazz Sunday at 7:30, and then they play Atlanta at home. Then they get back on the road. They play Charlotte, they play Miami, they play Detroit, 3-game road trip. Charlotte, Miami, Detroit. Then they come back home for the Bulls, the Hornets, the Cavs. So that's what's upcoming with the New York Knicks, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time. I'm going to get up out of here. If anything pops off, tonight with the New York Knicks, I won't be back on, but that means I'll talk about it tomorrow. All right? I will catch y'all later. Be peaceful and spread love, ladies and gentlemen. Out of here. Peace.